All right, page 144, new chapter, 9,876 days. Remember telling the story to Ruby. So all those chapters were him telling that story. Ruby is finally asleep. I watch her chest rise and fall. Bob, too, is snoring. But my mind is still racing. For perhaps the first time ever, I've been remembering. It's an odd story to remember. I have to admit, my story has a strange shape, a stunted beginning, an endless middle. I count all the days I've lived with humans. Gorillas count as well as anyone. Although it's not a particularly useful skill to have in the wild. I've forgotten so many things, and yet I always know precisely how many days I've been in my domain. I take one of the magic markers Julia gave me. I make an X, a small one, on my painted jungle wall. I make more X's and more. I make an X for every day of my life with humans. My marks look like this. The rest of the night I mark the days, and when I am done, my walls look like this. And so on, until there are 9,876 X's marching across my wall like a parade of ugly insects. All right, so that sentence on page 146, and so on, until there are 9,876 X's marching across my wall like a parade of ugly insects. That is two different literary terms. One is easy, the other one not so easy. 76 X's marching across my wall like a parade of ugly insects. 147, a visit. It's almost morning when I hear steps. It's Mac. He has a sharp smell. He weaves as he walks. He stands next to my domain. His eyes are red. He is staring out the window at the empty parking lot. "Ivan, my man," he mumbles. "Ivan," he presses his forehead against the glass. "We've been through a lot, you and me." So I think you can see Mac feels a certain way. And I'm curious at what you all think about Mac. Write a sentence about how you feel about Mac. How does he make you feel and why? So maybe 2 sentences on that sticky note. A new beginning. We don't see Mac for 2 days. When he returns, he doesn't talk about Stella. Mac says he is anxious, good word, to teach Ruby some tricks. He says the billboard is bringing in more visitors. He says it's time for a new beginning. All afternoon and into the evening, Mac works with Ruby. Ruby's feet are looped with rope so that she cannot run. A heavy chain hangs off her neck. Mac shows her Stella's ball, her pedestal, her stool. He introduces her to Snickers. When Ruby obeys Mac, he gives her a cube of sugar or a bit of dried apple. When she doesn't, he yells and kicks at the sawdust. When George and Julia arrive, Mac is still training Ruby. Julia sits on a bench and watches them. She draws a little, but mostly she keeps her eyes on Ruby. Bob watches too. He's hiding in the corner of my domain under knot tag. It's raining outside, and Bob does not like damp feet. Bob is a picky sort. Ruby trudges behind Mac, her head drooping. Endlessly they circle the ring. Sometimes Mac slaps her flank with his hand. Suddenly, Ruby jerks to a stop. Mac pulls the chain hard, but Ruby refuses to move. "Come on, Ruby." Mac is almost pleading. "What is your problem?" "She's exhausted," I say to myself. "That's the problem." Mac groans. "Idiot elephant." "Idiot human," Bob mutters. "Walk, Ruby," I say, although I know she's too far away to hear me. Do what he says. Walk, Mac commands. Now. Ruby doesn't walk. She plops her rump on the sawdust floor. I think maybe she's tired, Julia says. Mac wipes his forehead with the back of his arms. Yeah, no, we're all tired. He pushes Ruby with the heel of his boot. She ignores him. George looks over from the food court where he is wiping off tables. Mac, he yells. Maybe you should call it a day. I'll close up. Mac yanks on Ruby's chain. She's as anchored as a tree trunk. Good simile. He pulls harder and falls to his knees. That does it, Mac says. He brushes sawdust off his jeans. I'm through playing around. Mac stomps off to his office. When he returns, he is carrying a long stick. The gleaming hook on its end is almost beautiful, like a sliver of moon. It is a claw stick. Mac pokes Ruby with the sharp point. Not hard, just a touch. I can tell he wants her to see how much it can hurt. I growl low in my throat. Okay. So we're seeing something from Mac we've never seen before. We're seeing something from Ivan we've never seen before. And we have to go back and maybe think about that promise that he made to Stella. He's not happy. Ruby doesn't budge. She is a gray, unmoving boulder. What is that? She is a gray, unmoving boulder. She closes her eyes, and for a moment I wonder if she might have fallen asleep. I'm warning you, Max says. He breathes out. He stares at the ceiling. Ruby makes a huffing sound. Fine, Max says. You want to play it that way? He draws back the claw stick. No, Julia cries. I'm not going to hurt her, Max says. I just want to get her attention. Bob snarls. Mac swings. The hook slices the air just a few inches above Ruby's head. See why you don't want to mess with me? Max says. He draws back the claw stick again. Now move! Ruby jerks her head, flinging her trunk toward Mac. She makes a noise that sends the sawdust scattering. It makes my glass shiver. So what I want you to do is close your eyes right now and hear the sound that Ruby is making and picture what Ruby is doing. I don't know, we've not seen this sort of attitude from any of the animals. Because most of the animals have been there for a long time, have had bad things happen. Ruby's a different sort. I don't know if you've noticed this. And she's new there. How is she acting? What's a good word to describe that? It is the most beautiful mad I have ever heard. Ruby's trunk slaps in to Mac. I don't see exactly where she strikes him. Somewhere below his stomach, I think. And I know he must be uncomfortable because Mac drops the claw stick and falls down on the ground and curls into a ball and howls like a baby. Direct hit, Bob says. On to the next chapter. Poor Mac. Mac groans. He stumbles to his feet and hobbles off toward his office. Ruby watches him leave. I can't read her expression. Is she afraid, relieved, proud? When Mac is gone, George and Julia lead Ruby from the ring. It's okay, baby, it's okay, Julia says, stroking Ruby's head. They settle Ruby in her domain and make sure she has fresh water and food. Before long, Ruby's dozing. Dad, Julia asks as George locks Ruby's iron door, do you think Mac would ever hurt Ruby? I don't think so, Jules, George says. At least I hope not. Maybe we could call someone? George scratches his chin. I wish I could help Ruby, but I wouldn't know how. I mean, who would I call? The elephant cops? Besides, George looks down. I need this job, Jules. We need this job. Your mom, the doctor bills. He kisses the top of Julia's head. Back to work, you and me both. So I want you to think about where this puts George and Julia. They need the job, they need the money, but I think they're worried that maybe Ruby isn't being taken care of. And I do want you to think about Mac. Like, why is he the way he is? You know, he took in Ivan and he lived with Mac for a long time, and you can tell that Mac isn't necessarily a super mean guy, but why is he acting the way he's acting? And think about how he feels about Stella, who's been there for a while, who had been there for a while. It's very complicated, right? So why can't George just turn in Mac for doing the wrong thing? Or should he? And why is Mac acting the way he's acting? Julia sighs and reaches for her backpack. She removes a small piece of paper, a bottle of water, and a small metal box. Homework first, George says, wagging a finger. Then you can paint. It's for our class, Julia explains. We're doing watercolors. I'm going to paint Ruby. George smiles. All right, then. Just don't forget your spelling. Dad, Julia asks him, did you see Mac's face when Ruby hit him? George nods. Yes, he says solemnly. I did. Good word, solemnly. He shakes his head. Poor Mac. I turn away, and only then do I hear him laughing. Sometimes you get what you deserve, right? Page 157. Colors. Watercolors. Julia opens the metal box. I see a row of little squares, green, blue, red, black, yellow, purple, orange. The colors seem to glow. She pulls out a brush with a thin tuft of a tail at its end. She dips the brush in water and wets the paper, then taps at the red square. When the brush meets the damp paper, pink petals of color unfurl like morning flowers. I can't take my eyes off that magical brush. For a moment, I'm not thinking about Ruby and Mac and the claw stick and Stella. Almost. So think about what painting is for Ivan in a lot of ways. When he paints or when he sees this stuff, he's not thinking about all the things that bother him. It's a release. A lot of people do the art, do the arts, like I play guitar, so that I can kind of get away. And it seems like Ivan has a lot to get away from, right? And Julia gives him this opportunity. Julia touches red again, then blue, and there suddenly is the purple of a ripe grape. She touches the blue, and her paper turns to summer sky, black and white, and now I can see she is painting a picture of Ruby. I can make out her floppy ears, her thick legs. Julia stops painting. She takes a few steps back, hands on her hips, gazing at her work. She scowls. It's not right, she says. She glances over her shoulder at me. I try to look encouraging. I picture this. Like Julia is sitting there with Ivan. And Ivan's talking in this book. He's narrating this book. But I think we all know that most of this is in his mind. The talking he's doing with Stella, the talking he's doing with Bob, it's left to our imagination. We can imagine them grunting and barking and growling, and they're making animal noises if we were to hear them, but they can understand what they're saying. At least that's in my imagination. They don't ever really say how they talk to each other. So you have to picture Julia. Julia's talking to Ivan, and Ivan's trying to talk back to her without really talking. So picture what this looks like. Julia starts to crumple up the paper, then reconsiders. Instead, She slides it into my cage at the spot where my glass is broken. Here you go, she says. A Julia original. That'll be worth millions someday. Gingerly, I pick up the paper. I do not eat a single bit of it. Oh, hey, I almost forgot. Julia runs to her backpack. She pulls out 3 plastic jars, 1 yellow, 1 blue, 1 red. She opens the jars and an odd, not food smell hits my nose. Julia pushes the jars one by one through the opening. Then she slides some paper through. These are called finger paints, she says. My aunt gave them to me, but really, I'm too old for finger painting. I stick a finger into the red jar. The paint is thick as mud. It's cool and smooth, like bananas underfoot. I think the key phrase there is, the paint is as thick as mud. I pop my finger into my stomach. I pop my finger into my mouth. It's not exactly ripe mango, but it's not bad. Julia laughs. You don't eat it, you paint with it. She grabs a piece of paper and presses her finger on it. See, like this. I place my finger on a piece of paper. I lift it, and a red mark is there. I get a bigger glob from the pot and slap my hand down on the paper, on the page. When I pull my hand off the paper, its red twin stays behind. This isn't like the ghostly handprints on my glass, the ones my visitors leave behind. It's a good description, ghostly handprints. Why are they described like that? And it's not like the ghostly handprint. The handprint can't be so easily wiped away. Very cool. Page 160. That's where I'm going to leave off here until the next chapter, A Bad Dream. Predictions. What's that bad dream going to be? All right. When you're done with this, if you've been using sticky notes or writing it on a sheet of paper, put your name on it. Make sure I get it. Onward and upward. Good job, guys.